You're watching Dante's Boxing Nation. Woo!
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Okay, so this is an update to a video I was actually working on before the news came out that William Zepeda pulled out of this fight, claiming that he's injured. While I was working on this video yesterday, I didn't have time to finish it. I got busy. And then I wake up this morning to find out, after all that stuff that Shakur Stevenson said, all that pressure he was putting on William Zepeda, all of Shakur's tweets was directed to William Zepeda and Golden Boy's Eric Gomez. Eddie Gomez, he uses the name Make a War on Twitter. You know, it's just so ironic when you hear somebody like Eric Gomez or other boxing fans using these words like war. I want to see a war. We want to see a war. But in reality, there are a lot of fighters that fight for Golden Boy that are avoiding wars at all costs. The truth is, these race fans, they use words in boxing that they don't even understand. Once again, they don't understand the meaning of the word war. All they're really doing is just repeating what they heard other decaf say. Decaf stands for dumb casual ass fans, which is the reason why I have to break this down and educate you guys. The two main strategies in a war is to either conquer new territory, a new country, which would be considered the offensive strategy, and then you have the defensive strategy. This is the country or the people that never wanted a war. They just want peace. But if someone declares war on them, they're going to do either two things. They're going to either give up their territory without a fight, or they're going to defend their territory. So in this scenario, William Zepeda, he would be the fighter with the defensive strategy. He does not want a war. Now, the champion, Shakur Stevenson, he is the one with the offensive strategy because he is declaring war on William Zepeda. He wants to take his territory. His goal is to take William Zepeda's country. And the way you do that is by taking this to the battlefield, which would be the boxing ring. Once Shakur defeats him, he wins the war by taking his soul, his pride, and his precious undefeated record. And then after he conquers William Zepeda, he moves on to conquer bigger countries. Metaphorically speaking, I'm not saying it's going to play out that way. I'm just telling you guys, this is how strategical war works. Speaking of strategy, there are many different strategies when you are fighting in the ring. In the military, with the smartest strategy will often win, especially if we're talking about two different countries that have around the same amount of soldiers. And this is the reason why William Zepeda, he is trying to avoid this war with Shakur Stevenson at all costs. But he might be forced into this war and be forced to put together a defensive strategy. Now, with that out of the way, we can get to the video that I started yesterday that I never finished.
But we have to get our shit together.
Bruh.
Fighters are not daring to be great.
Bruh.
And we are stuck accepting mediocre fights.
Come on, man.
Look, being a fighter and now a promoter, knowing the ins and outs because I'm in it, I have to say it's the fighters who are killing the sport. People try to blame the promoters or the managers, the trainers. No, it's the fighters. I was one, and I can tell you that if my camp urged me to fight someone, and I wanted to fight somebody else, we were going to fight who I wanted to fight. What? The fighters today don't think they're getting paid enough, or they're scared of taking an L.
You guys heard it straight from the horse's mouth. You heard it from William Zepeda's promoter himself, Oscar De La Hoya, admitting that William Zepeda is one of those fighters that he's talking about. So you can no longer try to defend William Zepeda by pinning this on Oscar De La Hoya or making any other excuses for William Zepeda. It is completely cut and dry. When Shakur Stevenson declared war on Oscar Valdez, Oscar did the exact same thing. He tried to avoid that fight for as long as he could, which was about 2 years, because he never wanted war. He wanted peace. They say when people wave the white flag, that means they're surrendering. Well, when it comes to Oscar and William, they picked up the Mexican flag to signal that they wanted to surrender. But unfortunately for Oscar Valdez, peace was not on the menu, because Shakur had already declared war on him and started to invade his country, like Russia did to Ukraine. Now, the fact that Shakur and William Zepeda both fight for DAZN, it may just be a matter of time before Shakur invades his country, forcing William Zepeda to fight. Unless William does what Oscar Valdez did, which was move up to a higher weight class to avoid Shakur. That's what he did at the beginning. That's why it took that fight 2 years to come to fruition. Now, I'll close out with saying this. When it comes to Shakur Stevenson's tweets that he put up the other day, and mind you, this is before William Zepeda started using the injury excuse. So after he called William Zepeda and his team fake Mexicans and scary Mexicans that don't have heart, while at the same time saying that Mexicans usually have heart, but not these Mexicans. So after he says this, naturally, there's going to be some Mexicans responding to him in the comment section. So this Mexican in particular, he responded to Shakur Stevenson and he said, "Watch your mouth, Twitterson, racist MFer." And Shakur, he responds to him by saying, "I respect Mexicans. They got the biggest hearts in the world, to be honest. I'm just speaking on them dudes." Man, there's so much to say in that little exchange. I was getting ready to end this video, but now I'm going to have to go into overtime. Let me start by saying this to Shakur. Man, you ain't got to lie to no racist Mexican in your comment section by telling him that Mexicans got the biggest heart in the world. Now listen, it's one thing to say there are a lot of Mexican fighters out there that have heart, right? But to come out and say Mexicans got the biggest heart in the world, on what planet? Because it's certainly not this one. I mean, let's just forget about Oscar Valdez and William Zepeda for a second. Canelo Alvarez is the biggest Mexican name in the entire sport, and he is the furthest thing from having the biggest heart in the sport. I mean, he ain't declaring war on no countries. He certainly ain't declaring war on no big countries. Canelo is not looking for war. He's looking for peace, just like Oscar Valdez and William Zepeda are. Jaime Munguia, do you guys know before he fought Canelo Alvarez, he was Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo's mandatory for damn near 3 years, and he never declared war because he felt deep down in his heart that would be a country he probably could not conquer. So once again, metaphorically speaking, he could have easily enforced his mandatory position and got that title shot, but he decided to vacate that position. And mind you, this was way before he got the Canelo Alvarez fight. So it wasn't a case of him having these three options on the table. I could fight Andrade, Charlo, or Canelo. If Jaime Munguia had the biggest heart in the world, he would have looked at it like, man, I'm about to beat either one of these champions or I'm going to beat them both. Then I'm going to go after Canelo, and it's going to be the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. If he had that type of heart, that's what he would have done. Virgil Ortiz was Terrence Crawford's mandatory for a very, very long time, over a year. And the WBO confirmed that Virgil Ortiz was offered the fight. He turned it down. He vacated his number one spot, and then he ended up moving up to 154. Now, if Ortiz had the biggest heart in the world, he would have went after Crawford the same way Keyshawn Davis is going after Gervonta right now. The same way Crawford went after Errol Spence and then went after Jermell Charlo before he lost to Canelo. And now Crawford is going after Canelo Alvarez, despite being at a massive weight disadvantage if that fight ever comes to fruition. If Floyd Mayweather was 3 weight classes, hell, even 2 weight classes, naturally bigger than Canelo Alvarez, it's not a secret. Canelo wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather for the same reasons Golovkin wanted to fight Floyd, because they both knew that they would have a massive size advantage over Floyd fight night. And when Canelo ended up fighting Floyd Mayweather, he was 15 to 20 pounds bigger than Floyd. And of course, none of these race fans call Canelo Alvarez a weight bully. In fact, it was the complete contrary. They all tried to make excuses for the loser. And mind you, these are the exact same fans telling Devin Haney to just get over his quote-unquote loss to Ryan Garcia and stop making excuses. We know what time it is. Now, before I get off topic, there are definitely Mexican fighters that have heart, like David Benavidez, Jesse Bam Rodriguez. And understand this, guys, real heart means you're willing to get in the ring with the toughest guy, the biggest, baddest guy in your division. And David Benavidez has been willing to do that. But understand, there is a serious distinction between having heart and having the biggest heart, which leads me into talking about the great Julio Cesar Chavez. Now, I think a lot of us would agree that Julio Cesar Chavez has the biggest heart when it comes to the Mexican fighters. But I'm going to keep telling you guys, having a big heart, it's not just how you fight in the ring, but it's mainly being willing to even take a fight, take a tough fight, see a very skilled, gifted fighter and say, man, I'm willing to fight that guy. I think I can beat him. Having heart is about dealing with serious adversity. And Chavez has shown most of these aspects for the most part. But there were the moments when Chavez, he lost to Pernell Whitaker, and he got somewhat of a gift decision, which it turned out to be a majority draw, which means 2 judges had to fight a draw, and 1 fighter had Pernell Whitaker winning. It was one of the biggest robberies of all time. In fact, this was way before social media, which means there was no influence of social media. Therefore, even old media was all calling this a robbery. In fact, right before that fight, old media had Chavez temporarily at pound for pound #1, the best fighter in the world. Well, right after that fight, they dropped Chavez down to #5 and they put Pernell Whitaker at #1. I'm talking about KO Magazine, The Ring Magazine, and once again, this was before Oscar De La Hoya bought The Ring Magazine, which means back then, surprisingly, you got really impartial boxing news, impartial pound for pound lists. Even though the majority of old media has finally conceded that Terrence Crawford is pound for pound #1, the best fighter in the world, overall, the pound for pound lists today are complete jokes compared to what they were before the influence of social media. But I digress. Let's get back to the point. And just remind you guys, the reason why we're focusing on talking about Mexicans with heart is because of what Shakur Stevenson said to a racist Mexican fan on the internet. Just understand this, guys. When you hear a Mexican fan calling a black person a racist, especially when he's calling someone like Shakur Stevenson a racist, it's a code word for what they really want to call black people. I mean, but when you think about Shakur's history, how he used to go out of his way to praise Canelo, it didn't matter what Canelo did. You know, Shakur would be talking about how he's so great. Oh, man, I want to meet him. He the best fighter in the world. I don't care what nobody say. And these race fans, they used to always pull out the Shakur Stevenson black card, only to defend Canelo Alvarez. But then when Shakur Stevenson would fight, they would go back on the internet, completely trashing Shakur Stevenson, right? Calling him boring. He's this and he's that. None of them were saying to themselves, hey, we got to support this guy Shakur because, you know, he's fighting for Canelo Alvarez. They never looked at it that way. I mean, this further confirms what I've been telling you guys from the very beginning. They may like what you say if you say something that aligns with their agenda, but they will never like you personally. They will never support you. They will never root for you. You can go out of your way to cater into their agenda, trying your best to echo every single thing that they say on the internet when you do your interviews. As soon as you slip up and tell the whole truth, that's when those race fans are gonna tell you what they have always thought about you. Okay, now I wanna get back to the main point I was trying to make about Julio Cesar Chavez and his heart. I was talking about when Chavez fought against Pernell Whitaker. Well, like I said, that fight, it ended in tremendous controversy, and it was Julio Cesar Chavez that turned down the rematch. Once again, this is another aspect of showing how big your heart is. Chavez, he finally met his match. He finally met a guy that completely beat him, outwitted him, outsmarted him. And on top of all of that, he is now considered pound for pound the best fighter in the world. So what do? Do you go right back to the drawing board, push for the rematch, just like Sugar Ray Leonard did with Roberto Duran? Or do you completely walk away and turn down the rematch because that's a little bit too much adversity to deal with? Well, guys, Chavez, he chose option B. He turned down the rematch, walked away, and never looked back when it came to Pernell Whitaker. But then, as he was walking away from Pernell Whitaker, he ran into another big problem, Frankie Randall. Now, the first thing you guys need to know is this was supposed to be an easy fight for Chavez because Frankie had already been previously knocked out years back by a guy who had a record of 31-5. He had 2 losses and he had a draw on his record. So Chavez thought this would definitely be a much easier fight than a Pernell Whitaker fight. Chavez is basically saying, as long as this man ain't no damn Pernell Whitaker, we ain't got no problems to worry about. It was the furthest thing from the truth. This turned out to be Chavez's very first official loss on his record. He was also knocked down for the very first time in his professional career. So because of the official loss, Julio Cesar Chavez, he took the rematch and he hired Emmanuel Stewart as his trainer. Now, in Emmanuel Stewart, he gave him a great game plan, which was to smother the punches and stay real close to Randall as opposed to being out in distance to get caught with that big right hand of Randall's. But unfortunately for Chavez, he got caught with that right hand again, got hurt real bad. His knees buckled as if he was going to fall down, but he stayed on his feet. Now, for the most part, Randall, he controlled the second fight just as he did in the first fight. But this would be another fight ending in controversy for Chavez because he would quit in this fight after a clash of heads caused a cut on Julio Cesar Chavez's forehead. But compared to Tim Tszew's cut, this was minor. It wasn't blood gushing all over the place. Once again, it wasn't a cut over his eyelid or even under his eye. Now understand this, guys. In the last 2 rounds of this fight, Randall was starting to put a lot of punishment on Julio Cesar Chavez, and he was going to Chavez's body very aggressively. I believe that Chavez was actually hurt to the body. Now, what's so ironic about the headbutt is it was Chavez that was leading with his head the entire night. They also said before the fight was stopped in the 8th round that Frankie Randall was winning the fight. I'm telling you guys right now, you guys can go watch it on YouTube. Frankie Randall was starting to walk down Chavez when it's so crazy because that was Chavez's game plan. Like I told you guys before, Emmanuel Stewart gave him the game plan to basically put his head in Frankie Randall's chest and work the body and try to walk down Randall. But by the last 2 or 3 rounds of the fight, it was Frankie Randall that was beating Chavez at his own game plan by walking him down. And I'm telling you guys right now, there's no doubt about it, Chavez, he would have either got knocked down again or stopped. The beating was even worse in the second fight. Because of Chavez's game plan, it gave Frankie Randall more opportunities to work on Chavez's body. And coincidentally, once again, the 8th round was the worst for Chavez. He took the worst beating right before Chavez decided to quit. And when I say he quit, the doctor actually confirmed that it was Chavez that basically said no mas. He did a no mas in the Frankie Randall fight.
I went up and evaluated it. It was a nasty gash. It was from a clash of heads, but it was my impression that Julio did not want to continue with that gash. That was when I looked at him, when I asked him, he shook his head twice to me.
He asked you to stop the fight.
He shook his head twice to me.
And you interpreted that as not wanting to continue.
Enough. That was enough.
You see, what the doctor was saying in a nice way is I interpreted that as no mas. It needed no interpretation. What Chavez did in that fight was a universal language. Now, there was a lot of controversy in this fight because the same round that once again Chavez, he quit, Referee Mills Lane, he takes a point away from Frankie Randall after acknowledging that the headbutt was unintentional.
Through this entire fight.
Okay, there's 1 point.
Unintentional, I believe.
And go.
1 point off here.
To the end of the round.
1 point
You're
off
taking
here.
a point.
1 point off.
1 point off from Randall.
How do you say?
If it's an unintentional, but why is he taking the point away?
That's a very good question. So Julio Cesar Chavez, he was supposed to be the quote-unquote blood and guts warrior. And he does a complete no mas as soon as he gets a cut on his forehead, which is why when the doctor stopped the fight, Emmanuel Stewart, he jumped up on the apron and he was really surprised. Emmanuel, he looked at the doctor, asked him what happened, and the doctor said, Chavez, he said he didn't want to fight anymore. So Tim Tszyu, he goes 12 whole rounds with a cut that's far worse than Chavez's cut. And Chavez, he quits immediately without even trying to fight with the cut. How can it be possible that Tim Tszyu is willing to do something that the great Julio Cesar Chavez was not willing to do? Could it be possible that Tim Tszyu has more heart than Julio Cesar Chavez? We're not talking about accomplishments. We're not talking about who's considered a greater fighter. We are only talking about heart, dealing with tremendous adversity in the ring. Tim Tszyu, he got knocked out in his very last fight. He could have quit on a stool, but instead, he chose to go out on his shield. Chavez, he had the exact same options as Tim Tszyu. I'm telling you guys right now, and I'm going to keep saying it, Chavez was on the verge of either getting knocked out, knocked down again, or even quitting on a stool. Something else that Chavez has done in other fights. He has quit on his stool. And let me tell you, there's nothing that Chavez hates more than to be called a quitter after he just quit.
Or did your handlers not allow you to come out?
Bullshit.
Okay? Bullshit.
Él está diciendo, te está
Yo no me
preguntando.
rajé, no, tú tampoco, ¿no? ¿Qué?
No, te está diciendo él.
Suéltame la mano.
No.
¿Qué?
Que si le
Yo nunca me rajé.
No, eso es lo que te
tú
pregunta.
shut up. ¿Ok? No es lo que dijo. Tú no estás transmitiendo,
Eso es lo que
no
preguntó
estás traduciendo lo que yo estoy diciendo, ¿ok? Yo no me rajé, en la esquina no me dejaron salir.
Eso fue lo que yo te iba a preguntar. Que si te rajaste tú o tu esquina te hizo rajar por la
¿En la esquina?
Claro, en la esquina no lo dejó salir. Exacto, eso es lo que yo le iba a contestar. Nada más te
Yo soy
hice
un
la
peleador con
pregunta.
pantalones.
Yo sé que tú eres y él lo sabe. Y lo dijo.
What was he saying?
He says that he did not quit. He's a man. He's a wholehearted. Like we always know that what a brave type of person he is, and he didn't quit. The corner stopped the fight because of the cut.
Okay, so Chavez, he was 34 when he got completely dominated by Oscar De La Hoya in the first fight. He was 36 when he actually quit against Oscar. And remember, Floyd Mayweather, he was 36 years old when he dominated Canelo Alvarez. Just to give you guys some additional contrast. And oh yeah, Floyd Mayweather, he never quit. So at the end of the day, it could be possible that Chavez, he could still be the Mexican fighter that has more heart than any of the Mexican fighters today. Because I never said that Chavez didn't have heart at all. I'm just making it very clear that there's no way you could say that Chavez has the biggest heart in the entire sport of boxing. Now, you guys know Isaac Cruz, in his last fight, he chose to fight Ariel Valenzuela, thinking that that was a safe pick because Valenzuela had already been previously knocked out. Well, he ended up losing his title to El Rayo, and the crazy thing is Cruz, he actually had a rematch clause, and he still did not take the rematch. I mean, how do you lose to someone that you were not expected to lose to? And I'm not talking about some undefeated, dangerous #1 contender. Because ever since Cruz lost to Gervonta Tank Davis, he's been extremely calculated when it comes to picking his opponents. And you have a rematch clause and you walk away from the fight? I mean, where is this quote-unquote biggest heart in the world? On what planet? I mean, boxing fans have got to stop repeating these ridiculous talking points that are the furthest thing from the truth just because you're used to hearing people say it. Man, don't let nobody hypnotize you and get you to believe that 2 + 2 is 3 just because you heard a bunch of decals on the internet say it. You know, I covered the Tim Bradley versus Jesse Vargas fight back in 2015. The fight was in California. And I remember after the fight, we were all sitting in the media room. And this Mexican girl, she comes in the room and she says, man, that Tim Bradley, boy, he got a heart like a Mexican. And obviously everybody else was pretty quiet. But I came out and said, man, that ain't no Mexican heart. That's him having heart in general. And you could tell when I said that, they were not used to somebody coming out and actually saying what other people are already thinking. Because once I said it, it was other people in the room that were agreeing with me. And even some of the Mexican guys in the room were agreeing with me, but they wouldn't have said anything if I didn't address it. With that being said, I'm gonna wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Key Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodekey.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram. Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com.